Breaking the Chains, a journey to rediscover yourself. The unconfessed truth, you're trapped. Do you ever feel that subtle, nagging oppression in your chest? That feeling of being weighed down, even when things seem good on the surface? It's not just anxiety or stress. It's the crushing weight of a life lived for others, a life designed to please spectators who don't even care about the show. You're trapped in a prison that you yourself built brick by brick, with every decision made to appease others, every action stifled by the fear of failure, every fake smile masking a desire to scream. And here's the cruelest part. Nobody forced you to do it. Nobody asked you to sacrifice your freedom, your essence, your authenticity. You did it voluntarily, chaining yourself to others' expectations, selling your identity for fleeting applause and momentary approval. What's even worse is that you yourself chained these expectations. The crumbling fortress of control, a mental trap. They sold you a lie, the illusion that control is the key, that if you manage every aspect of your life, everything will turn out perfectly. But absolute control is a myth, a mental trap designed to keep you busy, distracted, and disconnected from what truly matters. The more you obsess over having control, the more you slide towards anxiety, silent desperation, and a life you never actually live because you're always preparing for something that never arrives. That inexplicable void you feel despite having it all is because what you have isn't really yours. Your success, your relationships, even your thoughts are contaminated by the constant worry about how they'll be perceived. The more you seek external validation, the further you drift from your center, from that true essence you once knew but barely remember. You go further and further away from your true self with each passing day. Detachment, the key to unlocking your inner freedom. Michel de Montaigne, from his silent tower in the 16th century, understood something profound that we often resist accepting today. Detachment is not indifference, but the only path towards true freedom. We live trapped not by external circumstances, but by our sick attempts to control the uncontrollable, by our obsession to please, to fit in, to avoid criticism at all costs. What if the detachment you so fear is precisely the key that unlocks your prison? What if you dared to let go of that rope you hold so tightly, the rope you believe saves you, but that's slowly suffocating you? The more you try to control, the less control you actually have. The more you seek to please, the less authentic you are. The more you resist change, the stronger it hits you. The world doesn't function under your control, and it never will. Facing the unknown, the terror and the promise. Accepting this isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Life, in its chaos and unpredictability, demands something simple but terrifying: to let go. Let go of your need for approval, your fear of failing, that false identity you've created to protect yourself from judgment. Imagine what would happen if you stopped worrying so much about others' opinions. Who would you be without that constant fear? What would you do if you knew nobody would ever judge you? That person you see in your mind, that version of yourself who lives without mental chains, is who you really are. But there's something darker behind this reality. You fear letting go of control because, deep down, you don't know who you are without those chains. You're afraid to discover that your identity has been so diluted, so mixed with the external, that upon letting go, maybe nothing would remain. You spent so much time molding yourself to fit others' expectations, you forgot to cultivate your own. The liberating truth: finding yourself in the void. Here's the liberating and brutal truth Montaigne whispered from his tower. By letting go of what you are not, for the first time, you can clearly see what you are. The freedom you seek is just on the other side of the fear that now paralyzes you. It's not in a self-help book, motivational advice, or mystical secret. It's here, waiting for you to have enough courage to face your life and say, I no longer need anyone's approval. I no longer need to control the unpredictable. I no longer need to pretend. Are you ready to let go? Or will you continue clinging to control, knowing that each day that passes takes you further from your true essence? This is just the beginning of a journey you may not want to make, but desperately need. The decision is solely in your hands. Will you live trapped in a golden cage built by yourself? Or will you accept the risk of jumping into the unknown, into a freedom that may terrify you, but ultimately makes you feel alive? There is no in-between. You have to pick a side. The philosophy of detachment, a path to inner freedom. Welcome to the philosophy of detachment, to the pursuit of an inner freedom that will change everything you thought you knew about yourself. The path is unsettling, but the only thing more terrifying than moving towards that freedom is staying exactly where you are now. Remember that feeling trapped is not a good feeling, and a life of suffering is not a life at all. You've been convinced that pursuing goals is the most important thing, but what if most of those goals were never really yours? All your life, you've been climbing ladders that others built, without questioning whether you really wanted to get there. Now that you're so high up, what do you see? The panorama you dreamed of, or just the distorted reflection of what someone else wanted you to be? Redefining success beyond external validation. We're obsessed with success, believing that achieving certain goals will finally give us peace. But what exactly is success? And whose success is it anyway? You may have already achieved those goals, studying the right thing, working where it corresponds, relating with the right people, and yet you feel that something is missing. That feeling, that uncomfortable truth, is the voice you've ignored for too long, your authentic essence demanding to be heard. Montaigne discovered in his confinement that true success looks nothing like what they sold you. It's not social position, accumulation of goods, or external recognition. True success, the one few dare to pursue, is living fully aligned with your own nature. But to do that, you have to know who you really are beyond the mask, the expectations, and the false version you present to the world. Without fully understanding yourself, the journey is pointless. The cost of pretending, stress, anxiety, and emptiness. You've become so accustomed to pretending that you don't even notice the immense effort you make daily to sustain an image that doesn't represent you. But the mind is relentless. Even if you try to ignore it, something will always rebel, something that breaks the facade. As long as you continue hiding behind characters, you'll never know true tranquility. The stress, anxiety, and emptiness are simply the consequence of a life lived for others. So get rid of those that want to see you fail. This is extremely important and can affect your well-being. The comfort of the uncomfortable. Choosing fear over authenticity. Most people prefer the security of an uncomfortable life over the risk of facing the uncertainty of being themselves. They prefer to continue with a half-life, settling for crumbs of happiness, rather than facing the risk of discovering who they really are. Which group are you in? Will you assume the risk of finding yourself? Or will you remain comfortably numbed by routine? Routine is an effective anesthetic, keeping you busy, distracted, and trapped in a repetitive circle that numbs your will. But this apparent security comes at a high price, the total loss of your inner freedom. Freedom's paradox, challenging expectations and disappointing others. Freedom isn't doing whatever you want at any moment. It's having the courage to be true to yourself, even if that means challenging expectations, breaking patterns, and sometimes disappointing those you love the most. It's not easy, but it's necessary. Perhaps you think, what if by being authentic, I lose everything I've achieved? If you really need to pretend to maintain what you have, then it was never yours in the first place. True relationships, projects that matter, achievements worth keeping survive perfectly well with authenticity. Only by being authentic do you discover what really matters and what was simply taking up space. Taking the leap, embracing uncertainty and discovering your true self. You have much less to lose than you imagine, and much more to gain. But you must first take the leap into the unknown, into a life you don't fully control, but that at least will truly be yours. Detachment doesn't mean abandoning what you love. It means understanding that only from absolute freedom can you love and build genuinely. Everything you possess from anxiety and attachment ends up possessing you. People don't realize how much power relationships can have. Most live in fear of losing what they have because they've never allowed themselves to discover what would happen if they lost it. They cling desperately to relationships, jobs, and prefabricated identities, forgetting that real life begins right when you stop clinging to what doesn't represent you. Choosing your own existence, spectator or protagonist. Will you continue living by inertia, afraid to discover who you are, or will you finally have enough courage to let go of the known and launch yourself into the uncertainty that terrifies you but holds the possibility of discovering something much more valuable? Who you really are, away from control, approval, and fear? You need to make a choice. Montaigne walked this path, and it's the same path that now lies before you. Will you dare to walk it, or will you settle for continuing to be a spectator of your own existence? The answer is yours alone. You will need to make the decision that changes your life. Storytelling as self-exploration, mirroring our identities. Storytelling isn't just about conveying knowledge or emotions. It's a deep mirror of our search for identity. When we narrate, we position ourselves in front of the reflection of what we are or what we long to be. The narrative becomes a powerful tool for self-exploration, where each character or situation projects our deepest desires or fears. You are the main character of your story. We often forget that fiction is a way of rehearsing life, an emotional simulator in which we can live multiple destinies without real risks. In times of uncertainty or crisis, stories become even more relevant, offering refuge and catharsis. Beyond comfort, they allow a boldness that we seldom dare to show in our everyday reality, inviting us to transgress limits and explore different perspectives. You can live any life you desire as long as you tell yourself that story. The power of internal narratives, shaping reality and destiny. How much do the stories we tell ourselves influence our decisions? Perhaps the narrative we cultivate internally determines how we interpret external reality, shaping the course of our lives. The power of storytelling is not only social or cultural, but intimately personal, capable of transforming our present and future from the words we choose to tell ourselves who we are. You define who you are by the story you tell yourself. Changing the story we tell ourselves internally is a way to rewrite our destiny. Many people live trapped in inherited narratives that don't belong to them. Stories of failure, limitations, imposed roles, and accept them as truths. Reclaiming one's own narrative can be a revolutionary act, rewriting ourselves not just as victims, but as protagonists with agency. Self-fulfilling prophecies, the world responding to our internal script. The stories we tell not only affect how we act, but also how others perceive us. A well-articulated narrative about who we believe we are can become a self-fulfilling prophecy, influencing our relationships, opportunities, and the way the world responds to us. Consciously building our personal story is not just introspection, it's a life strategy. We also must consider the role of contradiction within the personal narrative. We are not linear beings, nor should our stories be. A rich narrative includes dark zones, changes of course, contradictions, and ambiguities. The best stories are not those where everything fits perfectly, but those that leave us with open questions, moments of discomfort, and flashes of truth among the confusion. The beautiful parts of a story are the imperfections, rewriting ourselves, unfinished texts in perpetual creation. We never stop rewriting ourselves. Every conversation, encounter, and silence adds a line to the narrative. We are perpetual writers of an unfinished text. Every decision, no matter how small, is sculpting a new version of our story. If you've read this far, you may have realized something powerful. We are not secondary characters in a story written by others. We are authors in the midst of a creative process. There are no final drafts. Every day can be a new page, but also a page that rewrites the previous ones. What yesterday seemed like a sad chapter today can be read as the turning point before rebirth. That perhaps is the great alchemy of the human narrative, turning scars into symbols, mistakes into plot twists, silences into suspense. The art of living, embracing uncertainty and the unwritten story. What if the true art of living was not knowing exactly what story we are telling? In uncertainty, there is also beauty. Not knowing whether you are in a comedy, a tragedy, or an epic offers an almost magical freedom. Sometimes the most powerful stories are not those that close with a big applause, but those that leave you wanting to keep writing because it's not over yet. This may seem scary, but you can trust in yourself to finish the story in the best way possible. Summary: embracing the power of detachment and rewriting your story. Let's recap the key takeaways. Acknowledge your cage. Recognize the expectations and fears that are holding you back. Embrace detachment. Let go of a need for control and approval. Define your own success. Stop chasing goals that aren't truly yours. Be authentic. Dare to be yourself, even if it means disappointing others. Rewrite your narrative. Take control of your story and create a future you desire. Embrace contradiction. Accept the imperfections and ambiguities of life. Live in uncertainty. Find beauty and freedom in the unwritten story. See storytelling as self-exploration. Narrate for freedom, not for control. Remember, you are not a bystander. Instead, create your own persona and take charge of your life. You're living your story, so be authentic or it won't be authentic at all. Conclusion: the journey to authenticity and unfettered living. We have reached the end, but you know that endings are also disguised beginnings. If any of this resonated with you, it's time to start rewriting your story and create a future that aligns with your authentic self. Become a conscious, curious, and brave narrator of your own life. Close the book for now, but don't put it away because the next paragraph could change everything. And if you choose the journey of a lifetime, I wish you luck.